Well, oh, there it is. Why? Um, okay, I think. Hmm. I'm hoping this is working. I'm sorry for the. Oh, okay, good. One person is watching. Okay, good. We got so many more here tonight. Yeah. Okay, let me just write down who's here.
Are your talks permanently on YouTube?
It will be. I'll put it. I'll send a link to it. Yeah. So what happens when this does live streaming? It when I finish, it records it and keeps it.
What I mean is past talks.
Yeah, they're all there. There's a place on the website actually where it says Rabbi Sermons on the website. It also says classes I've taught. So you go on there. It's a whole playlist. Start in 1 second. Okay, so thank you all for coming tonight. And we know it's fall. It's really cold outside, so must be time to have a weeknight adult education class. So I wanted this to be 4 weeks in a row because it's a lot easier to remember that it's 4 weeks in a row, but I can't make it next Wednesday night. So it's tonight, and then it'll be 3 weeks in a row, November 1st, 8th, and 15th. Okay, so that'll be our schedule. I apologize for not being available next week. So the idea behind this class is not to get too political, is based on the President of the United States and our, so again, not to be political, but our understanding of leadership as expressed by the current President of the United States. And it seems like there are, Matt, again, we're hearing grumbles in the audience. It seems like almost every day there's another element of leadership style or personality that we might question as to whether is appropriate for a leader to exhibit. So how about if we just leave it at that? So there's an element of compassion. There's an element of working together with other people, things like that, that we might question as to whether what does Judaism have to say about what it means to be a leader. So I had the privilege years ago when I was in rabbinical school to serve as the editor for the International USY convention for their source book. So the source book, it's not, it seems like it's just educational material, and it is, but but it actually was a more serious publication at the time. And I worked with Rabbi Jack Moline he did the writing, I just did the editing, which basically meant making sure the footnotes were right and that the comma was in the right place, that kind of thing. But he wrote a book on Jewish leadership and heroism. So that was when he was, even before he was in Alexandria. This was he was in Danbury, Connecticut, and he dedicated the book to his two daughters and didn't even mention his son because his son wasn't even born yet. That's how old the book. His son is my oldest daughter's age. They graduated JDS together. So that's how old this book is. The idea, I don't want to get into heroism. I do want to talk about leadership. And so to talk about leadership, what I was planning to do in these 4 sessions is to look at a couple of examples of leaders in the Bible and to understand how the Bible portrays them, how the rabbis portray them, and therefore understanding then what the lessons we learn from them about what it means to be a leader. And I'm talking about not necessarily just to be a political leader, but to be a moral and religious leader. Because the model in the Bible, for the most part, I mean, I was thinking of, we're going to do Abraham tonight, and I was going to do Moses, and then I was going to do one of the prophets, and then I was going to look at Maimonides and see what he says about leadership in terms of the kings. That's how I wanted to structure the class tonight. So for the most part, Abraham and Moses seem to be religious leaders, but there may be elements to them that we'll see that are also political in nature and military as well. So what that all means in terms of leadership, what that means in terms of what we're supposed to look for, and is it realistic to look for when we elect leaders today? Are they characteristics that are only supposed to be for leaders of Israel, or are these characteristics that are across the board generic to anyone who is a leader? Okay, so feel free to interrupt at any point with any questions or comments, but I'd like to get right into it and look at Abraham and look at how we're introduced to him in the Torah and see what questions come to mind as we're introduced to him. So we basically are told at the end of this coming week's portion, which is Noah, we're introduced to Abraham this way. And Abraham is called Abram first, or Avram. He gets the letter He added to his name to become Avraham a little bit later, just as his wife is Sarai, and her name changes to Sarah at the same time, a little bit later in their lives. So we're told at the end of chapter 11 in the book of Genesis, chapter 11, verse 26. When Terach had lived 70 years, he begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now, this is it Haran? No, Haran. So it's hard to tell in the English. Sometimes in English translations, they'll have a dot under the H to tell you that that's supposed to be a H. And our English translation of Chumash doesn't do that. So it's Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Those are his 3 sons. Now this is the line of Terach. Terach begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begot Lot. Haran died in the lifetime of his father Terach in his native land, Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Nahor took to themselves wives, the name of Abram's wife being Sarai, and that of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terach took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and they set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans for the land of Canaan. But when they had come as far as Haran, they settled there. The days of Terach came to 205 years, and Terach died in Haran. Okay, so that's the background. So their intention was to go to Canaan, but they got waylaid in Haran. So they had a son named Haran, and they got waylaid in Haran. Okay, so Haran, which is Syria today, northern Syria. Yes, Susan.
Why did they decide to leave in the first place?
Why did they decide to leave? Doesn't say. Doesn't say. And why did he leave two of his sons behind? He took his grandson, but he didn't take that grandson's father. He took his son Abram, his oldest son. Well, you assume it's the oldest because usually the order they're presented is the order of age. So Abram, Nahor, and Haran are the three sons. He took Abram and Abram's wife Sarai. He took Haran's son Lot, and that's to Canaan, but got waylaid in Haran and stopped there. Okay, what happened to the other sons? We don't know. Julian.
But all this was at God's.
Well, no, we don't know. We don't know. Now, so that's the background. Now, chapter 12 is the more famous chapter. This is the very next verse. Very next verse. The Lord said to Abram, this is chapter 12. Did God ever speak to Abram before? No. The Lord said to Abram, go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. And I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse him that curses you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you. Abram went forth as the Lord had commanded him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot, and all the wealth they had amassed, and the persons that they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they arrived in the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem, at the terebinth of Moreh. The Canaanites were then in the land. Okay, so that's the more famous introduction to Abraham. So how old is he? 75. Why did God speak to him? We don't know. Have no idea why God spoke to him. Okay, but why him? Why? You don't know why. Exactly. Not only don't you know, Julian, nobody knows why. Yes, Susan.
How did he know it was God?
Yeah. Yeah, right. What?
How did he know it was God?
Oh, how did he know it was God? Okay, that is a deeper question, Susan, that the rabbis would never ask. Because it's in the Torah. How can you not know it's God? Okay, so there's a given, because we've already had 11 chapters of God doing things. It's the same God. Okay, so, but how did he know that God was talking to him? We don't, but that's still a good question. Okay, and God says to go to Canaan, but they were on their way already. Now, did God tell Terach to go to Haran? To go to Canaan, I mean? So we have God saying to Abraham and his family to go to the land that I will show you. But already a couple sentences before, they were planning to go there. So had God talked to them about it before, and is God now just encouraging him, you got to finish your mission, go to Canaan. Why go to Canaan? Why couldn't he be a great nation where he is? Okay, but Canaan becomes Israel, but still, why couldn't Syria become Israel? Oh, oi. But I don't know, Damascus might be a nice city. It's just as old as Jerusalem, if not older. It's just as fertile. There's this fertile crescent. Yes, so archaeologists and other scholars would say that what Terach was doing with his family was what a lot of people were doing, migrating up and around what's called the Fertile Crescent. So the Tigris and Euphrates River Valley. So if you could picture in your mind's eye, both the Tigris and Euphrates start in Syria, or northern Syria in the mountains, and goes down into Iraq. So Baghdad's on one of those rivers, and then it ends. Both those rivers start far apart, and then they converge in a V at Basra and the Persian Gulf, at the bottom there of Iraq. So the Tigris-Euphrates River valleys are very fertile. You go up into Syria, and then you come down through the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan River Valley. All of that then is what's called the Fertile Crescent. So what year was this? We have no idea, but it was clear that different peoples, tribes were migrating along that Fertile Crescent area. And so why they went, we don't know. But we do know and that Abraham is 75. So what happened the first 75 years of his life to cause God to speak to him? So before we get to other things that Abraham does, this is where the rabbis come in, where the rabbis in the Midrash, in their commentary, answer questions that the text presents. Okay, so all the questions you ask, plus some others, are saying darsheni, interpret me, Midrash darsheni, interpret me. So that's a phrase that the rabbis would say. That the question, Abraham's 75 years old. What happened the first 75 years of his life? Darsheni, interpret me. Why was Abraham worthy of God speaking to him? Because nobody else from Noah, well, there was one, Lamech. Lamech was taken to God. But who was Lamech? The text doesn't say too much about him. But God speaks to Noah, and then it's 10 generations until he speaks to somebody again. What makes Noah worthy? What makes Abraham worthy? These are questions that, why did he leave also? Why couldn't God set up Abraham as a nation in the land that he was? So there's a collection that Chaim Nachman Bialik did over 100 years ago with his partner Yehoshua Ravnitsky, called the Book of Legends. So there are several collections of Midrash out there that have been studied over the centuries. One is called Midrash Rabbah. So that has Midrash Rabbah has for Genesis all the 5 books of the Torah, and these are homiletical midrash, as opposed to midrash for the sake of deriving Jewish law. This is midrash for the sake of learning lessons about the people. Okay, so that's the kind of midrash we're looking at. Midrash Rabbah, and there are other collections too. So it can be daunting to try to go through all of that midrash. So Bialik and Ravnitsky went through it and anthologized it into this Book of Legends in Hebrew. And this is the English translation that came out about 30 or 40 years ago. So it's organized according to the chronology of the Bible, and then there are other topics as well listed there. So near the beginning of the Book of Legends are these stories about Abraham. So there's this first story, which is on page 31 of the Book of Legends. I'm going to read to you. When our father Abraham was born, okay, we're just told that he was born in the Torah. So now the Midrash come up with a story about him. When our father Abraham was born, a star rose in the east and swallowed 4 stars in the 4 corners of the heaven. So what is that similar to? What other star rose in the east when somebody was born? Yes, it reminds us of Jesus. The same time, this Midrash is written around the time of Jesus. So one underlying goal of the rabbis is don't think, good friends, well, they wouldn't have said that, good friends, Christians, that you are the only ones who could think that the star rose in the east when Jesus was born, because we have our stories as well of other people long before Jesus, or whose stars rose in the east as well. There will be stories about Moses also, about the star rising in the east. So, when our father Abraham was born, a star rose in the east and swallowed 4 stars in the 4 corners of heaven. Nimrod's wizards said to him, okay, who's Nimrod? Nimrod. So if you want to call somebody not a nice kind of name, like you're an idiot, you would say, oh, you're such a Nimrod. But it's a brand name of sandals in Israel. I don't know if they still make them, but they're the leather, not the Tivas that are the common ones today. But before that, the all leather ones were called Nimrod. But Nimrod was he is mentioned in these generations from Noah. Let me just find him. Just a second. He is a king of one of these nations. I'm sorry that I hadn't checked this before. Oh, wait. Yeah, he's not... just a second. I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. Here, verse 8 of chapter 10. Cush also begot Nimrod, who was the first man of might on earth. He was a mighty hunter by the grace of the Lord, hence the saying, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter by the grace of the Lord. The mainstays of his kingdom were Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land, Ashur went forth and built Nineveh, Rehovot Ir, Calah, and Resen between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Okay, so from this, there are lots of other stories in the Midrash about King Nimrod and how mighty he was. Before Abraham, well, okay, that's the other thing. All these people live a long time. So he was born before Abraham, but lived a long time. It doesn't say when he died. So this is the time of Methuselah, right, being the oldest, long 900 some odd years, right? So, yes. So anyway, all these guys lived a long time, but this is pittance compared to ancient Sumerian myths of, so Sumeria is the ancient civilization that was in the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. And it's the first cuneiform tablets that we have. The first form of writing is from the Sumerian people. And from them, we had collections in their cities of ancient myths and stories of the origin of their people. And they have these kings who live for tens of thousands of years. Okay, so our people in our Torah, not even 1,000 years, but close. Okay, 1,000 years in your sight, O God, is but a day. So that's in Psalms. Nobody lived to 1,000 years, almost. But for God, even if they had lived 1,000 years, it would have been considered in God's time like a day. So the Sumerian kings lived tens of thousands of years. So other Bible scholars would do comparison of Torah and the first 11 chapters of the Torah and our myth, our creation stories and our flood story, compared to the Sumerian story. So we have Noah, they have Utnapishtim. That's his name. We have Yam is called sea. They have a god named Yama, which is the same thing. So they have Marduk, the name Mordechai comes from Marduk. It is a Hebrew name, but Mordechai comes from Marduk. So anyway, so that we have these stories around. So there are lots of stories about Nimrod and how he ruled in this area where Terach and Abraham were born. Okay, so Nimrod is the king. The stars appear in the sky in this unusual format. It's foretelling something. And how could Nimrod not be in charge? And why shouldn't it be telling something about Nimrod? Because he's the mightiest man on earth. Nimrod's wizards said to him, "To Terach at this hour a son has been born, out of whom will issue a people destined to inherit this world and the world to come." That's what the wizards are saying to Nimrod. "With your permission, let his father be given a house full of silver and gold on condition that his newly born son be slain." So this is the first of several stories in Midrash about the wizards or the counselors looking out for the welfare of the king. So that we have this about Pharaoh when Moses is born. So people the counselors who care about Pharaoh's divinity and Pharaoh's leadership are concerned with this competing one who could be Moses, who might take over. So the Nimrod's wizards are concerned about the stars and about Abraham possibly taking over from Nimrod. It's saying let's make sure that this doesn't happen. Let's buy the baby from Terach and see if Terach would be willing to sell the baby, and then you can kill the baby. Terach is happy because he has silver and gold. You're happy because then this prophecy can't come true. Okay, so it's a common thread in Midrash. So Nimrod sent word to Terach, saying, "Last night a son was born to you. Now give him to me, that we may slay him, and I will fill your house with silver and gold." What do we care? We know that that's not true. So let's go right. So our questions are going. Think of questions about the story. Why are the rabbis writing this story? Okay, because the story is not true. Terach said. So Nimrod comes, offers him the silver and gold to pay for the baby. Terach said, "I reply with a parable that will make you understand my anguish. A horse was told, 'Let us cut off your head, and we will give you a barn full of barley.' The horse replied, 'You fools, if you cut off my head, who will eat the barley? So too, if you slay my son, who will make use of the silver and gold?' King Nimrod said, 'From what you say, I gather that a son has indeed been born to you.' Terach, 'Yes, a son was born, but he died.' Nimrod, 'My offer was for a live son, not a dead one.' What did Terach do then? He hid his son in a cave for 3 years, and the Holy One provided for the child 2 apertures. Out of one issued oil, out of the other fine flour, so that this baby would be fed with oil and flour in a cave for 3 years, because his father lied to Nimrod saying that the son died. So he had to hide Abraham in this cave." So I'm sorry that I can't switch the camera for the 5 people who are watching to see Julian Liedman's face. His mouth is like that. Right? What kind of craziness is this? Okay, so oil, yes, so oil and flour. Like the baby knows how to make bread out of oil and flour. And where's the yeast? But yes, Julian Rosenberg. It's just for the people watching, so I'm not. Yes, right.
You said the Holy One provided. So
yes, God did. Yes, right. That's what the rabbis are saying happened to Abraham.
Before God had.
Right. Remember, we only know that Abraham was born, and then chapter 12, he's 75 years old. What happened in those 75 years to prove that his worth of God speaking to him?
But what I'm getting at is that
yes.
God, this one God, existed for 75 years.
Yes.
At least 75 years before he told Abraham
to move to Canaan. Right. Yes. Exactly. So, but again, for the rabbis, the rabbis have to come up with a story that will authenticate Abraham and provide even more background to his legends. He's already great from the Torah, right? We pray for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We say that 3 times a day, right? And we say God of Abraham at several other points during the prayers. Okay, so what's so great about Abraham that we pray for him, right? What?
He could cook at 3.
He could cook it even before that. That's right. He knew what to do with oil and flour. That's right. So that's why we should pray for him, because he knew how to cook. What a miracle that was. Now, we know the other stories about him in the Torah, but I wanted to provide this background that is, yes, that it is humorous, because what kind of craziness is this? But the rabbis have a reason for it. Yes. So let's go on to the end of this. When Abraham was 3 years old, he went out of the cave and, observing the world, wondered in his heart, who created heaven and earth and me? Okay, 3 years old, smart boy, asking who. He's walking out of the cave, and that's the first thing he's asking is who created heaven, earth, and me.
Like Mozart, he was a prodigy.
Like Mozart, he was a prodigy. Yes. All that day, he prayed to the sun. He walks out of the cave. It's light out. He prays to the sun. In the evening, the sun set in the west, and the moon rose in the east. Upon seeing the moon and stars around it, he said, "This one must have created heaven and earth and me. These stars must be the moon's princes and courtiers." So all night long, he stood in prayer to the moon. Right? Sun goes away, moon takes over. Moon must be in charge. In the morning, the moon sank in the west, and the sun rose in the east. Then he said, "There's no might in either of these. There must be a higher Lord over them. To him will I pray, and before him will I prostrate myself." At 3 years old, he figured out the sun is mightier than the moon is mightier than the sun, something mightier than both of them, because something makes both of them disappear at some point during the day. Must be God. Okay? And that is the reason why Abraham had a relationship with God, so that God could speak to him, because Abraham figured out about monotheism. Okay? There are plenty of other stories in here, which I won't bore you with at this time, but there's the idea also to highlight the monotheism is the sense that Terach had an idol store, and people are coming to buy idols from the store, and Abraham, being his Terach's son, is working in the store too. Terach goes out on a business meeting, leaves Abraham in charge, and he decides to play a game on people who are buying idols, and he then puts the hammer in one. He smashes all the idols and puts the hammer in the big idol's hand. And Terach comes back. "What happened to all my idols?" And Abraham says, "The big one broke all the others." And Terach said, "You fool! They're all made out of clay. How could that happen?" And Abraham said, "That's exactly the point. Why is everybody praying to these things that don't have any power? Only God has all the power, right?" So people think that story, because that story is always taught in Hebrew school, and in day school they think that story is in the Torah, but it's not there. That story, along with the one I shared with you, plus several others, are all there to provide some background as to give Abraham's religious background, where he became spiritual enough to be called by God, Zealot.
That was my question, because I thought I learned that in Hebrew school.
Right. So it's not in the Torah because, again, we're told that he's born. He moves with his father to Haran, and then we have no idea how old they are when they do that. And then we're introduced to Abraham when he's 75 years old. So with the background, what do we learn about leadership so far? From the nothing in the Torah, but what from the rabbis? What are the rabbis trying to teach us about Abraham? Milt.
He took initiative.
He took initiative, and what kind of initiative?
He saw something that was right, and he tried to, by breaking the other rules.
So by breaking it, so in the idol story, right, taking initiative because he had an idea and he wanted to prove it right. Okay, and yes, what else?
He was special when he was born.
He was special when he was born, right? So so in other words, he didn't acquire the leadership through experience. It was kind of granted to him. He was born with it as kind of like as a with all these movies and TV shows. That's the new TV show, The Gifted, about all these mutants with special powers, right? They're just born with these special powers, right? Yeah, some people. If you just watch I don't watch the show. I just see the commercials between the sporting events that I'm watching, and so it's kind of like that. Abraham. So for the rabbis make Abraham and other characters in the Bible as born with these superhuman powers. But these superhuman powers are not except for Samson, there's nobody else has superhuman strength. They have superhuman spiritual powers of being able to connect to God that the average person doesn't do.
Maybe I'm too much of a cynic, but I don't see leadership powers there. What I see is rabbis interpreting something. Let's assume
yes.
the 3-year-old was that way, but they're interpreting something for their own purpose.
Okay, so yes, certainly what Julian is saying, they're interpreting something for their own purpose, but their purpose is to teach us. So in other words, they could come up with any story about Abraham. They could have said that Abraham was a reluctant child, that Terach had to drag him to school. Terach had to hit him over the head to get him to learn. God had to speak to him for years and years and years until Abraham said, "What's that voice that I hear in my head?" They could have come up with anything to as background, but so could have chosen anything. They chose this to show how special Abraham was. And the point behind it is that for these people in the Torah about whom we pray and we invoke their names, they have to exhibit these special qualities. And for them, if we're going to be invoking their name, then that's leadership in a particular way, and the leadership quality that we might not think about is a religious sense. Okay, so from the Jewish perspective, what we're learning so far about Abraham is that there is a religious connection, a connection to God that is important in being a leader. Julian.
I'm reserved.
Yeah.
I don't agree.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe I'll get there.
Okay. So that's the point of the story, and then I want to show you a couple of other places that we might be familiar with from the portion Lech Lecha, which is all about Abraham and his life. So we have. So I read to you the first 6 verses of chapter 12, in which God spoke to him to go to Canaan, to the land I will show you, with his family. And then Genesis 17, when Abraham was 99 years old, so 24 years later, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am El Shaddai, walk in my ways and be blameless. I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will make you exceedingly numerous." Okay, so the Hebrew word, so God wants him to walk in my ways and be blameless. That is, hitalech lefanai veheye tamim. So tamim is a difficult word to translate. It's said of Noah also, ish Sadiq Tamim Haya Bidorotav. He was a righteous, well, if we're going with this translation, righteous, blameless man in his generation. So here, Abraham was blameless also, but Tamim. So the singular of Tamim is Tam. Do we know Tam from anything as a description of a child?
Tom judgment.
The simple child of the 4 children in the Haggadah. right? It's 4 children: wise, wicked, does not know how to ask, and the simple. So simple is Tom. Okay? So Tom, but simple in that context is not so smart, or maybe innocent, or maybe ignorant. Okay? So, but Tom in this context, in the description of Noah and Abraham, is not those negative connotations. Simple in the sense of pure or blameless. Naive in the way of not innocent of experience, but innocent of any blame, of any wrongdoing. Yeah, Susan?
In Yiddish, Tom means, oh, she's got some
Oh,
Tom.
no, but that's the Hebrew word ta'am.
Ta'am?
Yeah. So in Yiddish,
Okay.
so you get ta'am, which is spelled tet ayin mem.
Okay.
So ta'am means flavor, but you have this something,
Yeah,
some element to them. Yes, right. So there's some kind of flavor, some kind of taste to them. Yes. So ta'am in Hebrew becomes in Yiddish tam. Okay, but so, or like tam tams, the crackers. It's from the same Manischewitz took that and made, instead of calling them tom toms, tam tams, because it has tom, it has flavor, right? You got everything flavor, the plain flavor, right. So right. So here, this is a different. This word is the letter tough and the letter mem. So the letter tough and the letter tet make the same T sound, but it's a different letter entirely, and there's no silent letter in it either, no ayin. So it's just the letter taf and mem. So it's 2 totally unrelated words, even though they are homonyms, but no homophones, but not they don't mean the same. So tamim has a sense of being saintly to it. Okay, without any blemish, that kind of idea. And hitalech lefanai, so lech lecha is go, you go. Lecha is you, lech is go. So hitalech is another form of the word. It's like, it's kind of hard to explain this grammatically. It's the reflexive form, which means it's something you do to yourself. Okay, so the word to pray in Hebrew is lahit palel, which comes from the root to fall. So it's falling in yourself. So I'm not a grammar maven. It's a reflexive form of the verb is something that it's an action that not that you're doing on something else, you're doing to yourself to make it happen. So it's internalizing or what? Oh, netilat. Well, no, that would have to be. So any word that lahit something is the reflexive form. Oh, right. There's certain lahit labesh. Right. Okay. To get dressed. Right. Is something that you're doing to yourself. Right. So hitalech lefanai, go to yourself in front of me. So the action of going is this other form of walking or going that is internalized as well. So walk in my ways and be blameless. So these are characteristics that are attributed to Abraham that add to his personality and his quality as a person. Then we're told in chapter 18, this story, here, chapter 18, verse 16. So the angels had come to inform Abraham and Sarah that they're going to have a baby in a year's time. He's still 99 years old. She's 90, and she's going to give birth naturally in a year's time. So at age 91, she's going to have a baby. And yes, it's considered miraculous. Even when people live to 900 and something years old, to give birth at 91 was miraculous. So the angels had just come to Abraham and Sarah and told them this, and then they set out from there and looked down towards Sodom, Abraham walking with them to see them off. Now the Lord had said, shall I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? Since Abraham is to become a great and populous nation, and all the nations of the earth are to bless themselves by him, for I have singled him out that he may instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right, in order that the Lord may bring about for Abraham what he has promised him. Then the Lord said, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sins so grave, I will go down to see whether they have acted altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will take note. So another phrase here that is important is that he may instruct his children, that Abraham should instruct his children and his posterity to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is just and right. Okay, so he's supposed to walk in God's ways and be blameless, and to do what is just and right. The only problem is that the rest of the Torah hasn't been given yet. So in other words, the Ten Commandments haven't been given, the rest of the book of Genesis, all the other laws of the Torah haven't been given yet. So how does Abraham know what is just and right? Okay? It's innate, but even more than that, the rabbis would say he learned the Torah also. So in other words, of course, so if Abraham is going to be just and right, we're supposed to pray to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob 3 times a day. How could Abraham and Isaac and Jacob not know the Torah?
Don't you learn the Torah before you're born?
Right, but yes, how do you learn the Torah if the Torah hasn't been given yet? You just know it, yes. So that's why we have this little indentation under our nose. Yeah, well, so the rabbis like to explain these things about our bodies. So why do we have this little bump here? Everybody has this little indentation, right? Why? Do you know why you have that? Okay, now, scientifically, is there a scientific reason? Does anybody know? I don't know it. You can Google it. Why is it? I don't even know what it's called. But I know that if you don't have it, some people are born with the lip attached to the nose and need to have surgery, have a cleft palate, right? But otherwise, everybody's born this way. So it looks like on your iPhone or your Android where you put your finger on to get the phone started, right? Or before the iPhones, you just put your finger there. So for the rabbis, it's not a human finger, it's an angel. So in the womb, an angel. So right before, every fetus learns Torah and everything there is to know about Judaism, but before they are born, as they are coming out, an angel touches them and they forget. They forget everything and then have to learn it all over again. So that's why we have this, because the angel touched us and we forgot everything, but we have the ability to learn it again. So that's the nice thing. That's how the rabbis explain certain things about our bodies that are unusual. So that is related to, how do we get on to that? Learning the Torah. So, yeah, but the Torah already existed at the time of the rabbis to come up with that story that the angels are teaching Torah to babies in utero, okay? But the Torah was given at a certain time and place on Mount Sinai. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived several hundred years before Mount Sinai. So if you want to be historically accurate, how could they know the Torah before the Torah was given? So the rabbis had to say this adds to the nature of Abraham, and by extension Isaac and Jacob, that they had learned the Torah already, and even more so, God created the Torah before God created the earth and the 7 days of creation, to show that the Torah was there before. So that Abraham is supposed to do what is just and right. It's not that there was some innate sense of moral and ethical values that you just know are right. It's more that Abraham knew the Torah. So God, he walks in God's ways. He is blameless. He does what is just and right. And now there's this story. God wants to check out Sodom and Gomorrah and see, are they really that evil as they are reported to be. Verse 22, the men went on from there to Sodom while Abraham remained standing before the Lord. Abraham came forward and said, will you sweep away the innocent along with the guilty? What if there should be 50 innocent within the city? Will you then wipe out the place and not forgive it for the sake of the innocent 50 who are in it? Far be it from you, capital Y, that is, he's talking to God. Far be it from you, God, to do such a thing, to bring death upon the innocent as well as the guilty, so that innocent and guilty fare alike. Far be it from you. Shall not the judge of all the earth deal justly? And the Lord answered, if I find within the city of Sodom 50 innocent ones, I'll forgive the whole place for their sake. Abraham spoke up, saying, here I venture to speak to my Lord, I who am but dust and ashes. What if the 50 innocent should lack 5? Will you destroy the whole city for want of the 5? And God answered, I'll not destroy if I find 45 there. But he spoke to him again and said, what if 40 should be found there? And he answered, I'll not do it for the sake of the 40. And he said, let not my Lord be angry if I go on. What if 30 should be found there? And he answered, I will not do it if I find 30. He said, I venture to speak to my Lord again. What if 20 should be found? And God answered, I'll not destroy for the sake of the 20. And he said, let not my Lord be angry if I speak but this last time. What if 10 should be found there? And he answered, I'll not destroy for the sake of the 10. Okay, so this classic story here, what does that teach us? Negotiation, but what? For what? For benefit of these people that Abraham doesn't even know. He only knows Lot. His nephew Lot lives in Sodom. Okay? Teaches you logic? In what way?
It's illogical to destroy the city if you can't find those 5. Start off
50 down to 10.
40.
It goes down to 10.
So I think that there's some practicality, some logicalness in there.
Yeah, but it's more than that. I mean, a leader is supposed to fight for his people and supposed to stand up for the innocent and stand up for even those few people who might be doing good, so that everybody else merits on their behalf. So, and that's something that Abraham is exhibiting here. So from the Torah, you don't need the rabbis for this. From the Torah, we have Abraham willing to listen to God, Abraham walking in God's ways, being blameless, doing what is just and right, and even arguing with God for the sake of innocent and for the potential righteous people he doesn't even know. Okay, so these are elements I would argue are elements that the rabbis want leaders to exhibit. Okay, so political leaders should be concerned with the citizens of their country, but for the rabbis, political leaders also have to follow the Torah, and we'll get there when we learn from Maimonides why that is. But for model number 1 that we're learning is Abraham, and Abraham not only fights for the poor, for the stranger, but he's also religious and has a relationship with God. Yes.
Is there any midrash that explains that Abraham did some analysis that this one God is what he's selecting versus the multiple gods?
Oh, yeah. There are plenty of midrashim about how, that one story about how he's 3 years old, comes out of the cave, and just automatically is thinking about the ways of the world and who's in charge. So that's just one story. But there are other stories of him looking up at the stars, and other stories about growing up in his father's idol shop, just learning about the pagan polytheism that is rampant in that time, and logically making the argument, how do you pray to an idol when an idol doesn't move? Right? So, I mean, but But the story is about Abraham, but the story really is about the rabbis proving monotheism being right and polytheism being wrong. They're just putting it into the mouth of Abraham, right? So in other words, when we read Midrash, the point of Midrash is really for the rabbis to teach the lessons that they want to teach to us, the reader, to get their ideology across. They are just using the characters in the Bible as the tool to teach the lesson. So it's, in other words, they're not saying this, they're not saying that Abraham actually was this person, but they are saying Abraham was this. Look at Abraham and learn from him how to be, how to act, and how to understand God. Okay? So I just want to make that point that when we read Midrash, we're really reading the rabbis. We're not reading alternative stories that they find that didn't make it into the Bible. That's not what it is. These are rabbis making up stories to teach us more lessons of how we are supposed to understand what it means to be Jewish. Okay, so specifically what we're learning about Abraham is these aspects of leadership. That leadership entails being willing to listen to God and understand that there's a higher religious, moral, ethical principles to follow, to walk with God, to do justly, to do what is right and just, and to argue for the benefit of others. So this is model number one, is Abraham. So 2 weeks from today, we'll look at Moses and see what Moses adds to this model too. Any other questions? In fact, I didn't check down below to see if anybody was writing questions online. They were not. Yes, Milt.
There's something that happened to me in my work life.
Yeah.
When I worked for the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's a fact that a very young child was taken by a family to a pediatrician, and the pediatrician said, "I suggest you put the child on chicken soup." 8 years later, since the family did not want to argue with the pediatrician, they never brought the child back.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah.
And now the 11-year-old is examined again by the same pediatrician, who found that he had mental deficiency. Retardation. He had only lived on chicken soup for years.
Okay.
Apparently, that's a real story in New Jersey social.
That's really weird. But Abraham was able to live on oil and flour.
He grew up to be governor of New Jersey.
Okay. I'm not repeating that for those people watching the political commentary about Governor Chris Christie. No. So. The story of Abraham eating oil and flour for the first 3 years of his life, it's a bizarre story. But there is a story in the Talmud of a rabbi living in a cave with his son and just eating. So they have to hide from the Romans because the Romans are seeking out the rabbis who are teaching Torah, who are daring to teach Torah publicly. So Shimon Bar Yochai and his son run away to a cave, hide in a cave for 12 years. Miraculously, God provides a carob tree and fresh water in the cave, a spring. So this is what these two, the father and son, are eating for 12 years, carobs and water. So yes, they come out of the cave and they see people just going about their business, whereas they've been studying Torah and have been pretty intense about it for 12 years, isolated from all human life. They go out and see people just going about their business. Whatever they look at burns up, incinerates. People, fields burn up. God sends them back into the cave to kind of temper their fire. So that's another famous cave, living in a cave. And there's several other cave stories like that. So the only point of the Abraham living in a cave for 3 years was coming out and automatically thinking about God and the way of the world. So you see the sun out. Oh, the sun must be in charge because the sun's in the sky. Oh, the moon comes out and the sun goes away. Oh, the moon must be in charge. But the moon goes away. So neither the moon or the sun, there's got to be some higher power that you can't see. That must be God. So in that very simple way, the rabbis are teaching the basic element of monotheism that everybody can believe in. Because there are people in their time who are worshiping the moon god and the sun god and this tree god and the barley god and the wheat god and the rain god and whatever. So what? And the golf gods, right? That's right. And the baseball gods and whatnot. So yeah. So instead, there's one higher power over all of that. So yes, Adriana.
I may be wrong, but Abram was the head of his family.
Yes.
He wasn't the leader of others.
Right. So so Adriana's saying he wasn't a leader of others. Right. So he had a big household. So yes. So you're right. That's why we can't just look at Abraham as a model of leadership. We can look to him as a model of exhibiting certain qualities, not necessarily, but other people were supposed to bless them in his name, and he had a household of people that followed him. So that tangentially the Torah mentions that about when he came to from chapter 12, Abraham and Sarah and Lot and all the people that they made in Haran. That literally, if you translate that. So what does that mean? Somehow they converted people to his form of monotheism, and the people followed him. And then the rabbis come up with these other great miracles that Abraham performed too. There's a story of a fiery furnace, and Nimrod is threatened by Abraham and throws Abraham into the furnace, and miraculously Abraham survives the furnace. Again, another midrash story. So of course then people are going to follow Abraham because he's a superhuman guy. Yeah, Julie.
Do the Orthodox also believe midrash?
Oh yeah. Well, they more so. So the Orthodox believe in midrash. They more so believe that this is the word as important as the written Torah.
But they believe it was written by rabbis, or
they even more than written by the rabbis. They think that that's just as important a story as what's in the Torah itself. So for the Orthodox, well, there's Torah Sheba'al Peh, what JDS calls Toshba, those classes that our kids took. So Torah Sheba'al Peh is the oral Torah. Torah Shebichtav is the written Torah. This is the written Torah. This is the oral Torah. For the Orthodox, both oral and written were given by God to Moses at Mount Sinai. So this story is just as important as this story. But I would say no, that's clearly not the case. And I go with the scholars here that this is the rabbis interpreting this to help us understand what lessons we're supposed to learn specifically from the Torah that might not be so blatant and obvious in the text. Okay. All right. Have a good night, everybody.